everybody. Sorry I'm late. I was having some computer issues. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Great. It's 7:33, so I'll call the meeting to order. One of my last actions as president, but another one will be making a motion to hold the board meeting through Zoom tonight in light of the governor's COVID-19 disaster proclamation, et cetera, at the top of our agenda. Is there a second?
Mitchell seconds.
Any discussion on that before we go to a vote? Nope. Alrighty. Julie, if you're there, do you mind roll calling the vote on that?
Yep. Braun? Debbie Braun?
Yes.
Thanks. Mitchell?
Yes.
Morrell?
Yes.
Rogers?
Yes.
And Gaines?
Yes. Thanks, Julie.
Mm-hmm.
Moving into citizen comments then. Do we have anybody submitted ahead of time, Natalie?
Just the emails that I sent to everybody today. Do you want me to read those out loud?
Yeah, why don't we start with that? That's great.
All right. So we had a comment from a couple of our Elks Park garden renters. The first one is from Tom. He says, please pass my thoughts on to the board regarding the idea of not renewing plot rentals for consecutive years. That would be a bad idea. Just the same as the city of Evanston gardeners. The gardeners typically put loads of work in to improve their plots on a regular basis. And then we also had a message from Tracy, and she says, please tell the commissioners that I have spent over $500 on raised beds and dirt. I can see many of my fellow gardeners have also invested a lot of time and money improving their plots. If my plot is not renewed, I have no place to put my raised beds and no way to transport them, even if space were found. All of my money and effort would be completely lost. The soil at Elks isn't great and needs a lot of help to get things to grow in it. So having plots change hands every year means no one would really want to invest in improving the soil or bringing in raised beds. Gardening is slow to learn. I took the class at Ridgeville for 3 years in a row before I felt ready to get my own plot. I'm still learning a lot every year. Giving people just 1 year to grow, it just doesn't make sense. I know there are a lot of startup costs to establishing a new community garden, but Ridgeville already has the most expensive asset land. There's tons of space at Ridgeville and Cayman Parks, tons. Some could be fenced off and provided with water supply. If there is that much demand for gardening plots, then create more gardening plots. Giving people just 1 year to grow doesn't make sense. It may sound fair and like an easy, quick fix, but gardening is neither easy nor quick. It takes years to really learn how to garden. And I eat the food that I grow. It's not just a fun experiment for me. It's a practice of self-sufficiency and economy. Thanks for passing this on.
Thank you, Natalie.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra Madison. I also have a comment on the same topic, also some ideas for solutions. So if I could have less than 5 minutes of your time, I promise to keep it as succinct as possible. But I would like to share.
Sandra, let me just tell you real quick. We usually give 3 minutes as the per person. And I'm not going to be strict about that, but that's the parameters that we usually have set, just so you know.
Okay. Thank you for telling me that. I didn't know that. And I also didn't know about pre-registering. So I appreciate the time.
Sure.
And I have some notes here, so I'll make it quick. For some of you already know me. For those of you who don't, I started as a garden to table student. I became a teacher for 3 years before Abby took over. I've been an avid Elks Park gardener for many years and also ran the Edible Evanston Food Pantry program. So I'm very attached to Ridgeville, to gardening, and for years I've been wanting to get as many people off the wait list and into Elks as possible. We know the proposed solutions are about perhaps not renewing the plots, building more plots, easier said than done. I'd like to inquire about the current garden guidelines that state something what I call the use it or lose it rule, where if plots are not planted and maintained after June 1st, neglect could lead to a loss of gardening privileges. And I've been sort of a pest about this over the years. I've inquired about it, every time I see some plots not being used. And last year I sent an email on June 22nd asking, I 5 plots that were full of weeds. And I said, hey, you know, have these been reassigned or could these be reassigned for the season to people on the wait list? And Natalie was very lovely to reply on the same day very quickly and simply said that all of the plots had been accounted for. A month later, on July 21st, I took photos of those same plots that had not changed. The weeds were still there. They weren't planted. They weren't maintained. Nothing had changed. But I didn't bring it up again because honestly, I know there's so many other priorities and bigger problems to solve in the pandemic and everything else. You know, weeds are sort of like the least of everyone's concern. But now that it's a topic of conversation again, I'd like to perhaps ask if the commissioners would be willing to revisit the use it or lose it rule, that maybe institute a different version of it where instead of losing privileges for the year, you lose the plot completely. Another idea is microplots. I would love to have an acre, but for some people who just want a few plots, a 9 by 20 plot might be really overwhelming. And in the same way, there are different sized plots at the Ridgeville Garden and different pricing. Maybe that's an option for Elks. You know, the thing about the use it or lose it rule, to the benefit, it could be tried this year and potentially get some people off the wait list this year. And what prompted the email inquiry that I sent last year, people, that's the number one question I get when I'm out there from passersby. How do I get in there? And to be honest, it's very, very awkward to have the conversation about how to get on the wait list when we're standing next to plots full of weeds that clearly are not being used. So, you know, in full transparency, would I be heartbroken to lose my garden at Elks? Of course I would. That goes without saying. But I'm also thinking about how removing the established gardeners at Elks could impact the experience for the new gardeners at Elks. Because I spend more time, most days, I spend more time helping new people out there than I do tending my own plants. And it's not just me, the other established gardeners there have developed such a wonderful community. And with the mission of Ridgeville being to foster a strong, promote a strong community, I'm wondering if we can try some interim solutions that could maintain and help build upon the community that we've already established. Because I would just be, and that's not to say that a community couldn't be established with new gardeners every year, but I would be so sad to have the community that we've established be dismantled when there's such an opportunity to expand and build upon it and make it stronger than it already is. So this is a subject that's been near and dear to my heart for years. Anything that I can possibly do to help, I am more than willing to volunteer. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, anyone else who's here for citizen comment can raise a hand, throw something in the chat, and go ahead, Dr. Logan.
Yes, hello everyone. And I apologize too. I wasn't aware of the pre-registration ask, so I apologize for that. And can you all hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to speak, lend my voice to the conversation.
Oh, Dr. Logan, Dr. Logan, if you don't mind waiting, because Matt is saying he can't hear you, but I can. Matt, do you want to try your mic and see if we can hear you? I just want to make sure it's.
Sure, how's that?
Yep, I can hear you just fine. And did you try turning your volume all the way up, Matt?
Yeah, I'm up all the way, and I'm seeing Ms. Gabrielle Martin is kind of hearing the same, but I'll get close. I can hear you a little.
Okay, and just to be clear, since I had already interrupted you, sorry, Dr. Logan, there's not a requirement to submit citizen comment in advance. We just sometimes have people do that, especially if they can't make the meeting, because that's the only way they can participate in citizen comment if they can't be here. So I'm just in the habit of checking with Natalie right off the bat in case she's received anything in advance. It's not at all a requirement, just to be clear. But
Okay,
but go ahead, Dr. Logan.
Can you all hear me okay?
I can.
Yeah.
How about everybody else? Mick, you're okay? Matt Rogers, can you hear him? Debbie, yes. Okay. I think we're okay.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to lend my my voice to the conversation regarding our working together or what we were working towards. And I feel like my voice has been missing. I know in the last couple of board meetings, there's been numerous conversations. And I just wanted to say, unfortunately, we were not able to come to an agreement. And it was very frustrating on my behalf because of the time and the effort that I invested in the process for a couple of years, because even before Dr. Effiam was working with you all, I was in consideration. And at that time, I declined to work with you all because of some of the warning signs that I saw. So in my conversations with one of your board members, it was brought to my attention that you all didn't understand about why we weren't making progress. And there was frustration with that. And I couldn't understand that because we went from 8 different points of contention down to 1. and I felt we were close to working towards an agreement. But nonetheless, my frustration was the fact that, from the very beginning, I worked with the board president to a degree. I worked with the Ready Chair, the director of Park and Recreations, another board member, your director. I mean, during my time, I worked with so many different people, and I was told so many different things. And the process was very convoluted and very confusing. And to a T, each individual that I worked with apologized for the confusion or for the chaos or just for the mishaps or the misunderstanding. But I felt like in the end, frustration was being directed towards me as to why couldn't we come to an agreement. And I just wanted to lend my voice to that because I put a lot of time and resources into this process, and it was very frustrating for me as well. So from the very beginning all the way throughout, we were close, we didn't get there. And I do appreciate everyone's apologies, but it was very frustrating because of I run a small company and we're limited on resources. And what I was told verbally is not what I was being told via email with the director. And when I tried to get accountability via documentation on the email, he was always referring to having a phone conversation with me. And I did that. So I was being told one thing by phone, documentation was something different. And that was very frustrating. Another point of frustration is that you all released a newsletter in December of 2021, introducing me as a consultant working with you all prior to us even having a contract. And I saw no recourse for that. And the person who made the mistake apologized, and you all want to hold me accountable for your business decisions, but yet here you are announcing an agreement to the public in your newsletter, working with Dr. Logan, and we never came to an agreement. So those were some of the indications and warning signs that were very frustrating for me. And then from your meeting last week and last month and previously, you all are making reference to documents that I provided you, that I created from my contract, that you all are using with your new, potentially with your new consultant that you're going to work with. And that's very concerning for me. So it's like you can't work with me, but you can work with the documents that I provide. And then it was also stated, as it was noted in the minutes of your meeting, that Natalie, JC, and I created the proposal. No, I created that. Natalie and JC chimed in on it. They provided feedback. I created that document. My company's name is on that. I created that document. So I just wanted to speak a little bit to those frustrations. And then I appreciate hearing from the meeting last week that it was mentioned by one of your board members that it said, quote, I feel like we're micromanaging here in a way that's going to get in the way of efficiency. And honestly, I feel like I was a victim of that because of all the different people that I was dealing with, all the inefficiency, all the ineffectiveness, and all the confusion and chaos, and yet I was on the receiving end of that. So I was the one in the contract who requested that I charge hourly because I saw that I was being asked to attend bi-monthly meetings with the Ready Committee, the monthly board meeting, and it was a waste of time. And I just saw the inefficiency in that, and that was really, really concerning for me. And those were warning signs. So just to kind of wrap this up, I'm offended that you all feel you can use my documents, but yet you couldn't utilize my services. And for you to even allude in your minutes, it says, quote unquote, Ridgeville Park District will keep Dr. Logan in mind for future needs. No, don't keep me in mind because the relationship has been severed. And it's not about your needs. It's not about if you need me or if you need or what you need. It's about relationships in this community. And that's been unfortunately damaged. But that's part of what I understand you all are trying to repair and doing this racial equity work. And that's part of the frustration. It was also stated that the document that I provided, while during paid negotiations, was going to be used for future work with the future consultant. And I'm referring to the minutes from your meeting, and that's very concerning for me. So in closing, you all also made reference to using the YWCA Equity Institute. Well, I'm a consultant with the YWCA Equity Institute, okay, just so that you know that. You mentioned talking to the NAACP. I'm a member of the NAACP. And I know Tracy and Jeremy and Kevin and Darren and all the names that you reference, and it just feels like you want to use people when it's to your need or to your advantage. And too often the case, change happens on the backs of Black and brown people. And that's what this felt like in this case. So it's about you all forging your own relationships and to stop expecting people of color to do the work for you. When I was in the board meeting a few months ago, one of your board members asked me what was my approach or strategy for engaging the community, particularly Black and brown people. And that's not what I was being hired for. But yet she wants to ask me how to do that. You all have to do the work. You can't put that on the backs of other people. You can't just ask people when it's to your convenience, when it's convenient for you all. And that's very disingenuous.
Dr. Logan, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're at 6 minutes now for your comments. If you could wrap them up, it would be great.
Yes. It's about forging relationships. It's not about rules and regulations. There's a mentality of white supremacy that gets in the way of doing the racial equity work that you all might want to look in the mirror and take a look at. And from your own website, you talk about, being an organization that's inclusive and not divisive. And this has been a very divisive experience for me, unfortunately. And I just wanted to lend my voice to this conversation because it hasn't been present, and you all have, in a sense, been speaking for me. And I just wanted to lend that voice to it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming to share that. Is there anyone else here who is hoping to speak during citizen comment? And if so, you can turn your camera on, you can raise your hand, you can just jump in. I'm just checking the chat. Okay, I think that's it then for citizen comment. Next on our agenda is electing board officers for the year 2022-23. As I'm sure most, if not all of you know, I am not only stepping down as president, I'm stepping off the board. I'm moving out of the district boundaries, so I am not allowed to be on the board anymore. So I am, of course, not in the running for president. I will entertain any motions of why am I blanking on the word? Not appointment, nomination for president. Let's do president first. Is anyone interested in making a nomination for the next president?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Matthew Mitchell for president of the Ridgeville board.
Thanks, Mick. Are there any other nominations for president? Okay, seeing that there are none, we'll move forward with the nomination for Matt Mitchell. Is Charlie even with us? I don't see him on the screen.
Charlie will be a little late, but he'll be here. You need a second on that motion, by the way.
Well, that was my question. Is it like any other motion where we need a second and then, okay. So I will second that motion for Matt Mitchell to be nominated. And then I would imagine we're in sort of a discussion / Matt officially accepting the nomination. If you would like to do that, Matt.
Sure, I'll accept.
Okay, great. And is there any discussion before we move to a vote on Matt Mitchell as president? Okay. I know that Julie has left. Natalie, are you going to be doing roll call votes or?
I'll do the roll call. She's going to take minutes
later
from this recording.
Okay.
So I'll do the roll call. Braun?
No.
Mitchell?
Yes.
Morell?
Yes.
Rogers?
No.
Gaines?
Yes. Okay, congratulations, President Mitchell, which I believe is effective immediately. Is that correct? Is that effective immediately?
Yes.
Yes.
Who said yes?
Brian said yes. Yes.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Okay, great. Matt, would you like to take over?
Sure, thank you. So I'm going to jump right in. We're going to move on. Are there any nominations for vice president of the Ridgeville Board? I'd go ahead and nominate Mick Morrell. Is there a second?
This is Martha Gaines. I'll second for Mick Morrell as vice president.
So we'll open it up to discussion. First, Mick, would you accept that?
Mick,
Yeah.
you might be frozen. I don't see. Does anyone else see him moving? Oh, there we go.
Mick, you froze for a minute there. Would you accept the nomination for vice president?
Yes.
And does anybody else have any further discussion? Okay, Natalie, could we do a roll call vote?
Braun,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Morel,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Gaines.
Yes, and Natalie, just so you know, not that you'll be doing the roll call vote in the future once Julie is with us, but the reason I was being called last is because I was president. And if Matt, as president, wants himself to be called last, that's up to him. Brian informed me that as president, we have that right because we might be sometimes or frequently tie-breaking votes. So it allows the president to vote last. So that's up to you, Matt.
I'll just go ahead. We follow Robert's rules. It is one of Robert's rules. The president votes last.
Got it.
I'd like to keep that unless, for the time being.
No problem.
And so Brian, I'll reach out to you and Mick. I know we have to get some signatures on file for some bank accounts. Any other pressing needs we need to take care of?
I'll defer that to Jerry. If Jerry's around, he'll tell you exactly what we need to do with the signatures. Jerry, are you out there?
Yeah, I'm here. Wouldn't unfreeze here. Yeah, we'll have to do that. Typically, what the banks require is that we have a board resolution passed, naming the new signers and minutes. So it can sometimes take us a few months to get through the whole process, but I'll draft something for the next board meeting as far as a resolution, and then we can. Some of the banks will do it just off the resolution. Others will want to see the approved minutes first. So that's why it can take a little bit of time to make it happen.
Okay. Let us know. We'll work with you to get it done as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, moving on to approval of the minutes. We have 2 minutes up for discussion. First, February 10th, 2022. Entertain a motion.
This is Gaines. I'll make the motion to approve the minutes from February 10th, 2022.
Morrell seconds.
Any discussion? All right, Natalie, could we do a roll call vote?
Braun,
Yes.
Gaines,
Yes.
Morel,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes. And before the vote is finally called, Commissioner Braun cannot vote on that. She was not present at that meeting.
Okay.
She'll have to change her vote.
I'm changing my vote to nothing.
Braun.
I wasn't there.
Okay, so Braun abstains. Is that correct? Is that the right word?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay. And then Rogers, did you say your vote?
I will also abstain. I was.
Oh,
not
you
present.
also. Oh, that's correct. I'm sorry. Mitchell,
Yes. All right, motion passes. Moving on to the April 14th minutes. I'll entertain a motion.
Rogers moves approval of the April 14th
I'll
minutes.
make a motion to approve the minutes from April 14.
Matt Rogers got his motion in first. Mick, would you second?
Yeah, I'll second. Sorry.
No problem. Does anybody have any discussion on the April 14th minutes? Okay, and from the minutes, I see that Martha was absent. Can we do a roll call vote?
Yes. Braun,
Yes.
Morel,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Do I need to call Gaines so she can abstain? Gaines?
I will abstain since I was not at that meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to the approval of the bills. I see a bills report, bill summary, March, May 12th, 2022 in the packet. I'll entertain a motion.
This is Gaines. I'll make the motion to approve the monthly bills for May in the amount of $52,719.89.
Is there a second?
Roger.
All seconds.
Morel got there first. Any discussion? Actually, Brian, you want to go over the unusuals?
Sure, I'll give you a little update on some of the unusuals. As you go down, Jay's Payment Tech is $1,678. That's a good sign. That means registration for summer programs is coming in, so that's good. As we go further down, Wesley Daniel will start the mural. He's done a few preparatory things, but that'll be done in the next month. It's $1,000 for the indoor art. Evanston Lumber Company, just tell you what that was, 2x4s at 908 Seward outside on the driveway, trying to slow the water down through the newly planted grass area. And 2x10s, we put a new bed in the garden to table garden for their class. Karen Foreman is a refund. As we go further down, Imaginary Games is partner class for the spring. And further down, Russo Power Equipment 496.1111. That's the repair of a drive-behind lawnmower. So we're all good for the spring and the summer. Oh, by the way, the insurance, iParks, the annual insurance is on there. And that number is consistent with previous years.
Any further discussion?
I have a question, Brian. For IMRF contributions, is that something that only takes place when people are actively employed by Ridgeville as opposed to once they are no longer employed, retired, et cetera?
The IMRF retirement fund, that is a percentage of wages that the Park District pays, 4.5% this year.
Okay.
So the employee pays, the Park District pays, and the fund invests it, and that's how they have the money for pensions.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Is there a motion?
I think we did the motion in the second already.
Oh, you're right. No further discussion. We'll move on to a roll call vote, please.
I actually have one quick question. I remember from the past that technically people are supposed to abstain from voting on bills if they themselves contributed financially, such as paying for camp for their kid. Is that true? And if so, I'll need to abstain.
I think only refunds.
Only refunds. Is that your understanding, Brian? Natalie, yes,
I didn't hear the question.
Yeah, I think that's because we would be giving you a check. So if you're not receiving money from us, then I don't think you have to abstain.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. Thank you.
Ready? Braun,
Yes.
Gaines,
Yes.
Morel,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes. The motion passes. Moving on to approval of the petty cash expenditures.
This is Gaines. I'll make a motion to approve petty cash for May in the amount of $2,084.88.
Is there a second?
Rogers will second.
Thank you. Brian, do you want to walk us through this?
Sure. The top of the list, Amazon.com is power strips for the sound system. There's landscape staples for the gardens and washable paints for camps. Apple Incorporated, iPad memory, asbestos project, $75. That's for the testing of the tile that's on the staircase. Testing came back positive. The adhesive was negative. So we'll put that in the budget and get that removed next fall. Facebook was an ad, Intuit envelopes and blank checks for the bills. KFC was staff meeting lunch for the summer with staff. MailChimp emails over 2,000. Justin Radke concert for Earth Day. Red's Garden Center soil for Reba Park and plantings elsewhere. Rick Peterson Plumbing had the rod our sewer from Cayman Fieldhouse to the street, $400. Sam's Club was a variety of things, snacks for Earth Day, renewal of our annual membership, and paper products for our buildings.
Any questions or discussion? Natalie, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yep. Braun,
Yes.
Gaines,
Yes.
Morel,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes. The motion passes. Moving on to the monthly reports. Brian, do you want to start?
Sure. Ridgeville staff has been gearing up for the summer months by hiring part-time staff, preparing orders for programs, scheduling CPR, and staff orientation. They prepped summer equipment. We're doing inventory for budget purposes. Obviously, it's been very busy. I met with the Illinois Association of Illinois Parks Association, risk services for insurance discussion we have every year. It was a productive and positive meeting. iParks annual insurance bill, we just passed that in the May bills. It is in line with previous bills, but the good news is we'll be receiving an $1,100 refund in 30 to 60 days. It's part of the Casualty Contribution Support Fund to help park districts with COVID-19 expenses. Later on in tonight's meeting, I will present some highlights for the tentative budget for you. It's the first step in our planning process for the next fiscal year. You'll have to pass a form of the tentative budget in July. I'm sorry. In July, and then the appropriations ordinance in September. The final budgeting step will be passing the levy ordinance in December. It is our plan to install the Reba Park Play Circuit this month. We hope ground dries out, and it has, so we begin that process soon. Actually, looks like Monday the 23rd we'll begin it. We'll have to close part of the park for 2 to 3 weeks. We'll fence off that area. Cost of the installation is $9,800, and it's in the budget. Hull Terrace tot lot at the corner of Hull Terrace and Callan will be pruned in the very near future. A large cottonwood tree in the center of the park was apparently hit by lightning recently and will need some attention. Sunrise Tree Service will do that work for $1,400, and the tree is otherwise healthy and safe. And that's it.
Thank you, Brian. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Rosinski?
I have one quick question. So you mentioned the cottonwood tree. Do we have a routine for regularly checking trees that are notorious for hollowing out and falling?
Yeah, well,
like cottonwoods?
Yeah, our crew is in every park every day. They start by cleaning parks, and then they do a quick once over of what's the proper word? They'll inspect the park quickly, and when they cut, they go right up to every tree and see what's going on. So it's informal, but yes, we're in the parks every day, every park, and do take a look at what needs to be taken care of. Fortunately, we have money in the budget for trees, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, I was just curious because lots of times like cottonwoods will hollow from the inside and you don't notice anything on the outside. So I didn't know if we had any system in place for paying special attention to those types of trees.
When I have Sunrise out here for any issue, like a fallen branch that we can't handle, they'll inspect the entire park very quickly. And that's
Okay.
nice people. That's because they're looking for more work.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wondered so that we were being proactive about any potential tree falls.
We have several very old trees, and some of them are weeds, and some of them are very large, but we have several.
Any other questions or comments?
I've got one, Brian. I know you talked about the Reba Park in terms of installing the play circuit. It's my understanding we also ordered some nature-based play items in the last budget, but they arrived probably due to COVID delays in the winter, I think. And so I assume those would be put in the park once weather permitted. Are those things we're planning to put in Reba as well?
Yes, we have the pieces. If they're not assembled, I haven't looked, we'll assemble them and then we'll put those in the park.
Okay, great.
Anybody else? Thank you, Ryan. We'll move on to Jerry with the treasurer's report.
Okay. Under notable activity, I commented that Chase has not yet refunded our $9,000 from the fraudulent IPRF check. Since the publication of this report, we have received that money. So there's a bit of good news. They finally have refunded that money. So that situation is now closed. The financials for next month's board meeting will reflect that. Couple other things that I didn't get in the report as notable activity. I was going to bring up that I'm growing concerned because we have not yet received the Cook County levy edit reports, which are a part of the process of preparing the final tax bills that go out to taxpayers typically in July. Typically, we're asked to do the levy edit report in April, which is basically a verification that the county accurately entered our figures from the levy ordinance from December as a part of the calculation process of extending the taxes out to the tax bills. However, as it would happen, late in the day yesterday, we received notification from the county that they're going to have us do the levy edit reports in the next couple weeks. So that process is running about a month to a month and a half behind schedule. That seems to perhaps, maybe it's all standalone by itself. They don't really explain themselves, or it may be a part of the whole clue and discussion about tax bills are likely going to be late this year, which means our tax revenues will be coming in later than expected. But at least the process is moving forward with some signs that it's running behind schedule. Related to that, again, after this report was published, I got an invitation from Wintrust to attend a seminar that they're hosting in June regarding tax anticipation warrants. They've developed a product that they're offering because many local units of government, quote from their materials, are becoming increasingly concerned about the cash flow next fall. I'm planning to attend that unless board members feels there's another representative that should go instead. There is an option to have one extra person attend. We can have up to 2 attend. It's a 2-hour presentation from 8 to 10 a.m. at the Evanston Golf Club in Skokie is where they're going to be hosting it. I think they'll have other items on the agenda. I think the discussion of tax anticipation warrants was kind of just a teaser to get people to attend. But because we haven't had to do this in my tenure as treasurer, and because it's something we haven't had to do as a park district in a very long time, I thought it would be good to at least pick up a little bit of knowledge and information about it. And that's why I think I generally don't consider going to a lot of the things we get invites to, but this was one I thought I'll definitely do unless somebody thinks they're in a better position to do it.
So can we just talk about that real quick?
Sure.
I think you're in the best position to do it. And it sounds like if anybody else is interested, another board member could come as well.
Yeah.
Anybody have thoughts about that? Okay. If anybody's interested in attending that, can they reach out directly to you, Jerry?
Absolutely. Do it in the next couple days because I do have to RSVP, and I'll hold off till Monday on doing that.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Continuing on, you got the usual collection of reports talking about some of the key indicators as far as the budget performance on appropriations. We are comfortably within budget. The year-to-date expenditures are about 70% of the planned budget compared to a targeted utilization of 79%. What that means is we've got about $293,000 of budgeted appropriations remaining to be spent in the final 2 months of the fiscal year. In terms of revenues, we were tracking pretty below budget, but in the last 30 days, we've caught up pretty good. We're only 7,000 below the budgeted position at this point. So we're in a strong position on the revenue side. Our cash flow position shows that our revenues for the year are currently exceeding expenditures by 250,000 compared to a plan at year end to be about a $36,000 deficit. So we're sitting with a favorable $286,000 position right now. That's fairly consistent with and compares to the 290,000 of as yet unexpended but budgeted appropriations. So we've passed a pretty good sized corporate bills report tonight. Payroll will pick up in June. So this is typically the year we start to see some of the expenditures come up, but we're well positioned to end the year strong. And Brian and I are going to meet next week to kind of review and see, are we likely to be turning back some money? I mean, actually, we know we will to a certain extent because there's some things that are likely to be deferred into the next budget season because, for example, we aren't going to get some things that we wanted to get this year due to supply chain issues. So we're going to have a meeting to kind of report back to you next month on how we'll handle that ending up the year. In terms of our assets and liabilities, again, because revenues came in strongly relative to expenditures going out, our assets and liabilities increased from $1,425,000 to $1,453,000 at April's month end. Our cash and investment relationships, the Chase one exceeds the FDIC limits by only a few $1,000s. Consistent with our policy in the state law, Chase has pledged collateral at the New York Federal Reserve to cover those excess balances. And as we discussed last month, I did transfer the $200,000 out of the Chase relationship to the Illinois funds. There's only outstanding items. We've only got 2 items of particular concern at this point due to being aged beyond 2 board meetings. And actually, one of them that is in the write-off category should be resolved with what you passed on tonight's bills. No items are stale by 180 days or more. So the point is we're looking really clean and healthy on the outstanding and unresolved items. Again, kudos to Zhang for staying on top of those items. That's all I got.
Thank you, Jerry. Anybody have any questions or comment for Mr. Gibbs?
I do, Jerry. In terms of your outstanding unresolved items, I don't have every single treasurer report in front of me, but I thought we were in the habit of you specifying what those items are. So in this case, when you say there's only 2 items and that no items are still by more than 180 days, I'm just curious, why don't you specify what those items are?
Well, you have the report. You can just glance at them and see the dates. It's just when I write the narrative, I try to just keep it fresh each month. So if you kind of just quick glance at it, you can see that there's an approved not cleared item payable to Batista for $40 and another one to De Palma for $40. Those would be the most stale items. The item that I said was in write-off category is the unapproved to write off for $234.27 to Comcast. That's more, actually, if you look at the approved not cleared, we have an offsetting entry that's $1 different for $235.27. So that item's kind of been lingering because Comcast has been doing something goofy in their billing where they add $1 for paying it electronically and then credit us back $1. but the amount they're taking is different than what we owe. They did that 2 months in a row and then it straightened out. But what it does is it messes Jung up. It messes up the bills report and she then has to put through adjustments. So that's why I didn't rush to have you vote on that one, because Jung and I have been talking about it and tracking it with Comcast, and it seems to have finally ultimately self-corrected itself. So don't know what they were doing. I'll comment. I have RCN cable at home. They've been doing the exact same thing at RCN. So I suspect there must have been some regulatory or legal change that forced all the cable companies to do something different. And it's just confusing everyone. But you know, so anyway, that's all it is.
Okay,
Jerry.
thanks for the additional info.
Martha, you have anything else? Jerry, I know both of those families that have outstanding unresolved issues. If I can help connect at all, let me know.
Yeah, I will defer to Jung on that, because I don't really get involved in the working of them. I just kind of highlight, here's the problem, and then for whatever reason, I think she's just had priority on other issues, but sure. She'll jump on those and then deal with them. Usually it's either they can't find it or they've got it and they just haven't gone to the bank to cash it. It's kind of funny, talking with her, how many people nowadays just don't know how to cash a check or don't know how to deposit a check. They're like, what do I do with this piece of paper? More than likely what it is, I don't know what it is in these cases without digging into the files, but a lot of times these are refund checks for classes and things where they paid with them with a credit card online. We legally don't really have a good mechanism for refunding money back through a credit card. So the only thing we can do is cut them a check. And that's just increasingly very confusing to people. They don't know how to handle checks. But legally, our hands are kind of tied because we can only do what state law allows us to do.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, moving on to Natalie's report.
Hi. Okay. On April 19th, I was certified in mental health first aid for youths. I participated in an 8-hour course offered by Partners of Amita Health, and the certification is valid for 3 years. The YWCA Stand Against Racism was on April 28th, and the Park District participated. The staff stood outside along Ridge Avenue with signs to show support for anti-racism in our community. We were joined by New Ready Committee member Andrew Weimer and another Ridgeville neighbor. PEP Fest is going to be on June 4th. PEP is the D65 PTA Equity Project. J.C. Herman will be the Park District representative at this event, and will host an activity at our booth. If any commissioners or anybody would like to join her, I'm sure she would love some company. It's going to be held at Washington School this year. Summer camps and sports updates. Summer camps are filling up, but we still have space. We want to accommodate as many families as possible, but also keep campers and staff safe from increasing COVID numbers. We have a great staff this summer made up of plenty of familiar faces and some new ones. Our staff orientation and CPR certification is set for May 21st. We have coaches and assistants lined up for both soccer and t-ball. They are both set to begin the first week of June. Registration looks great for both programs, and there's plenty of space available. Summer class updates. We will offer a 10-week summer session of classes for adults, either outdoors or online this summer. This session will include Feldenkrais, multiple yoga classes, and strength and stretch options. I'm also hoping to find an instructor for a couch to 5K style walking club. Registration will open for the summer session on May 16th, sometime that week. I'm still confirming with my instructors. Farmers Market update. I am sad to report that Lions Fruit Farm will not be joining us this summer. So we will not have an official farmers market. They were unable to find staff to drive down here on Wednesdays. We will miss them, and they're always welcome to come back if anything changes. If Tom is able to find staff to come down here, he'll let me know, and we'll, of course, be happy to have them. Concerts on the Ridge. While we won't have a proper farmers market this summer, we will have a very exciting concert and food festival in Concerts on the Ridge. We have 10 scheduled performances, June 29th through August 31st. We will also be hosting Cocina Azteca, Firehouse Grill, and Cat's Cookies. So we have tacos and pizza and cookies, our favorite food groups. And then I've listed the lineup for you here. That lineup is also available on our website. Shakespeare on the Ridge. We don't have Shakespeare returning to the park this summer, but we do have theater. Mudlark Theater is doing a show at the park. It's a devised work with Kari, I think it's Kari Bowden is how you pronounce their name. That will be at the park May 27th through the 29th and June 3rd through the 5th. And then in August, we're going to have an adult group called Laughing Stock Theater, which is a Commedia dell'arte company that does devised comedies. So no Shakespeare. We good? So no Shakespeare, but we will have theater. And then just a quick update on the outreach and the block party. Tracy and I are focusing our work right now on planning. I've been in touch with Mick Morrell. He's assisting me to procure the necessary permits to shut down Reba Place between Sherman and Custer. The theme of the block party will be Taste of Ridgeville and will feature activities and demos from our own Studio 908 instructors and the camp staff. I plan to invite some of our partners to participate. The Evanston Public Library, the Imaginary Game, Purple Line Adventure Play, Grupo Axe Capoeira, I'll attend to, etc. I also hope that the Ready Committee and the board will attend to meet neighbors and enjoy the day. And I will continue to update you as those plans unfold. And that's it.
Thank you, Natalie. Does anybody have anything for Natalie?
I'm just curious, Natalie, what's up with the Shakespeare?
We will have Shakespeare. We will have Shakespeare next summer, but the company, my theater company, actually, that does the adult Shakespeare shows, everybody dispersed during COVID, so there's nobody in the city besides me, and I don't really have time in the summer to do a show. So one of our members will be back next year. He's finishing up grad school, and he's going to direct, I think, Caesar, that we had a cut for that was planned for 2020 that we had to cancel. And then Mudlark, I'm not sure. I think they just kind of went a different direction this year. They decided to do this devised work, which really sounds pretty cool. It's local kids from the neighborhood, and they're talking about, you know, being in quarantine and coming out of it and how nice it is to see people and sharing some of their personal stories with that. So we miss Shakespeare, but I'm happy to have some theater back.
Definitely.
All right. Anything else for Natalie? And we will then move on to the Ready Committee report from J.C. Harmon.
Hey there. Natalie is correct. I would love some company at the Pep Fest. I have a fun project to do. So if anyone wants to join me, I would greatly appreciate that. I'd like to start off by introducing Andrew Weimer. You all appointed him at the last board meeting. He wasn't able to attend, but he's able to be here now. So Andrew, I don't know if you want to take a quick minute to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. A resident of South Evanston here in the Ridgeville Park District, and my kids and I really love this. Leader Park, we're close by. We call it Forest Park. We're near the the Wednesday night concerts, and we really enjoyed being part of the district. And anti-racism is important to me, and so when we heard about this through the over at the NAACP, I'm involved there. We thought it'd be cool to have a connection to the Ready Committee. Talked with JC, and here we are. So.
Welcome. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Andrew, or should I just keep going through? Okay. Our meeting on April 21st was canceled. We had no pressing agenda items, and Natalie and I were working at the Parks Earth Day event. So we canceled that meeting. At our most recent meeting, the committee was updated on the board's decisions recognizing Juneteenth. doing equity training for new employees, commissioners, and committee members, the updating of the request for proposal and the search for an equity consultant, Andrew Weimer's appointment, and Commissioners Rogers' interest in joining the committee. There's a lot of good stuff that happened at the last board meeting. I was excited to share that with the committee. I also wanted to let you all know that I took a training through District 65 with Tracy Olasimbo. It was an identity, privilege, and power. I wanted to mention it because it was one of the best trainings that I have been to. So I just wanted to encourage you all, if you ever have an opportunity to do a training with Tracy, I would absolutely take her up on that. She had a really interesting perspective, and she made it really unique to Evanston. And since it was District 65, it was specific to District 65, which I thought was really great. So that brings me to the last thing that I want to bring to your attention. So as of May 5th, there was only one person who replied to the request for proposal. We are curious what the board would like to do. If you would like to extend the deadline, if you want to see if there's additional people for us to reach out to. I want to see how if you wanted us to interview the person who responded. I wanted to get some direction as to what our next step should be.
Any thoughts?
This is Gaines. Hopefully you can't hear the Hamilton in the background that my daughter's playing. Is the sound okay? Yeah, please do turn it down. I just wanted to respond to that, JC, by saying that it's my understanding from conversations with Natalie so far that this person who has applied would be a great applicant. So I would encourage the board to say, yes, please do interview that candidate. I think the idea of leaving a position open longer in order to find more applicants is fine in theory, but as everybody knows, we've had many delays, false starts in getting equity work going this year. And even though we are able to have sort of an unusual situation of being able to spend some of the budget a little bit later than we normally would be required to be within the boundaries. We haven't really discussed that yet, but because of the delayed tax payments, it sounds like there is going to be an ability to spend some of the tax dollars later, and that's great. There's still just no reason to delay, in my opinion. And so I would definitely move forward with interviewing that candidate. And then Natalie mentioned that she might follow up with some of the people who we've spoken to in the past to see, if they were additional options. So Natalie, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if that's something that you were still thinking about or.
Yeah, we discussed that at the last Ready meeting about maybe reaching out to a couple of the folks that we had talked to in the fall, but it was the day before the deadline. So I wanted to wait and see what the board wanted to do. If you wanted me to extend the deadline, I didn't want to ask them with less than 24 hours notice to apply. And then, I didn't want to, or offer them an extended deadline if the board didn't want to approve that. So, so if you'd like me to reach out, there was a couple people I could reach out to that we came up with at the meeting. I think JC also thought of a couple places that she could also reach out to. I sent it to the YW Equity Institute to share with their consultants. It was posted in a newsletter. It was posted on our website. I sent it to the email of local organizations that I always send any kind of opening to. I told Tracy Olasimbo about it as well. So I shared it, I think, with as many resources as I had available to me at the time. But if we want to extend, we can, or if we want to just move forward with the interview, make a recommendation and then take it from there, whatever the board wants.
I mean, it's my understanding that you could go ahead and interview the current candidate or make plans to interview that candidate. Meanwhile, I mean, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just seeing that this could be a path forward. Contact that current applicant, set up an interview, also reach out to people that we've interviewed in the past that we, felt good about, and see if they are, because they might not be available. Their schedule might be full or whatever. We don't know for a fact. Again, correct me if I'm wrong about this, because I missed the last Ready meeting myself. We don't know for a fact that the people we've interviewed in the past, before the RFP was created, have for sure seen the RFP and for sure know that we're still looking for an equity consultant, right? Like, we don't necessarily know if that's the case.
I know that the YW did share it with their equity consultants. And I know that because Tracy is an equity consultant with the YW. So she had mentioned to me that that they had shared it with their consultants. The structure that we had discussed and that I updated in the RFP before I, shared it with the world was that, the deadline was on last Friday. We were going to send any proposals we received to the board. The board would then have almost a full week to review those and then make a recommendation to us tonight as to who they wanted us to move forward on an interview with. The Ready Committee would then interview those candidates and then bring back our recommendation. So that way the board had kind of a pre-screening opportunity, or at least knew who we were talking to and were talking to them at their request. So if the board was able to review the proposal from Aisha and you'd like for us to interview her, we can do that. We can still set that up. And I don't know how that interview will go. The Ready Committee might not feel like it's the best choice, in which case we would come back with a recommendation to extend, or we might think she's great and she would be perfect. So we would make that recommendation. But I think at this point, it's just whatever you'd like us to do to move forward.
I kind of lean with Martha that we should move forward with the folks who responded and maybe give another short deadline, make that open to the public, and also, proactively reach out and make sure that folks are aware of it. I was thinking like another 2 weeks, like 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Okay.
You'd have two full work weeks to get it in. And we can
the RFP, so it does say in the RFP that I will update the website and the candidates who have made a proposal as to any changes. So I'll let Aisha know that, and I'll schedule an interview with her. In terms of the schedule that we created, or the system, I guess, if we do get any more candidates, I'll forward those to you as soon as possible. But how do you want me to communicate with the board to find out if you want me to interview them without waiting until the June meeting? Or do you want to wait till the June meeting to make a recommendation to interview any of the other candidates that could? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
I'm open to, if you send out an email to the commissioners and they can individually respond back to you.
Okay.
Just for efficiency.
Okay. Is that okay with everybody else?
My only question
Yes.
would be if we've established the official plan of the board weighing in, that would of course happen in an open meeting. Charlie, is that a problem if one by one board members want to tell Natalie, yes, go ahead and plan to interview? Am I understanding that right? That Matt, you were proposing that on the 2-week schedule from now, Natalie could let board members know if anybody new came into the mix, and board members would then respond to her one by one so that we're compliant with OMA. And so then Natalie, if enough board members say move forward with interviewing them, that would be the action. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Or no?
That works for me.
Charlie, did you understand my question?
No, I don't think I did. So are you asking, it's okay for the board members to tell Natalie that they want to interview this person. Are you saying, are the board members going to get together and interview this person outside of a board meeting?
No. My question was, if we have now established this, I don't want to call it a rule, but Natalie, correct me if I'm wrong. It's partly to make sure that moving forward, when people are interviewed, when the Ready Committee brings recommendations back to the board, that the board feels that they were involved enough and understood what was going on and approved of it, and didn't feel that suddenly they weren't in the mix. Is that part of that process?
Yeah, I think I would forward it to the board, and at least 3 of the board members say interview this candidate, then I'll schedule the interview, and hopefully we can maintain the timeline that we can get any potential interviews done, the Ready Committee can, so that we can make a recommendation of a final candidate at the June meeting.
June meeting, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fine, as long as I'm not, as long as, you know, I'm BCCing you now on email, so we shouldn't have a reply all problem. I think we'll be fine. I think we'll be following all the rules. As long as all that's fine with everybody, then that's what we'll do.
Okay, it's fine with me, as long as that's OMA compliant, that process.
And JC, does that work for you?
Absolutely. I know, I was just looking at the calendar. I think that timing would work well, because that would give us, we could either put together a special meeting, or we'll have a meeting before the next June board meeting. So I think that timeline will work well.
Okay. And do you have anything further in your report?
I do not. That's it. Thank you all.
Does anybody have any questions, comments for JC? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, JC.
So moving on to the next order of business, old business for action, clarification for hiring contract employees. Commissioner Rogers, do you want to take that?
Actually, I will defer to counsel, who has taken my original wording and put it into an actual ordinance. It still reflects the general intention of my ordinance, but my request, but it puts it in the more legal framework. So I don't know if Mr. Valenti would like to speak to that.
Yeah, so what we're doing is can everybody hear me? Okay, what we're doing is we're amending the necessary parts of the general ordinance to allow for Brian to exercise authority to enter into certain contracts with the limitations that we put in there, which I believe are what Commissioner Rogers first suggested back, I don't know, February, and everybody seemed to like those ideas. So that's what we've done. If anybody has any specific questions, please go ahead and ask. But basically, the process is going to be, if Brian's authorized to enter into a contract, he can enter into the contract
Charlie,
now.
Can I just interrupt? This isn't just Brian, this is the executive director.
Say that again?
This is the executive director, not just Brian.
Yes. Right. You're correct. It says, I think it says Director of Recreation, if I'm
Director of
not
Parks and
mistaken.
Recreation.
Yeah, Director of Parks and Recreation. So yes, that's correct. Currently, he occupies that position. So if it were to change and Bob Smith got the job, then he would have that authority. So are there any other questions?
Not for me.
No, so I guess I will go ahead and make a motion that we approve the ordinance amending sections 2.11 and 5.02 of the general ordinance dated July 14th, 1988, as outlined in our packet, with the one change being that we will have to change the name of the president on the actual document now, since we have changed presidents.
Yes.
Any seconds? Mitchell seconds. Any discussion? Natalie?
Can I just ask a quick question? Charles, I know when you and I talked about this, you had mentioned to me on the phone that you would consider any kind of employee that's making more than $10,000 to be a contract, or actually any employee is a contract. So will you just clarify, I think mostly for Brian and myself, if I were to hire somebody, or if there's somebody currently on staff that is a camp director or an instructor or something part-time or seasonal that makes more than $10,000, does the president need to sign their letter of engagement?
Yes.
Okay, so this goes for like normal hires as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, can I say a few things? So if we hire for instance, we have an employee who is a camp director and does some maintenance work. And then we have a few other directors, $10,000 with the way wages are now, there's going to be quite a few. Just giving you the heads up on that. There might be, every camp director might make more than 10,000. So we'll have to keep it. And here's the other question. Sometimes we don't know who's going to make 10,000 when we hire because they stay a little longer. For instance, youth in the parks. Sometimes we have a very busy summer and some of the staff has to stay longer, well into September for a few parks. We don't know that that's going to happen in advance. So they might make $11,000, but we didn't have President Mitchell sign beforehand.
Yeah, so in my opinion, if you're hiring somebody and you think there's a possibility that they might make more than $10,000, then you should not be the final word on contracting with that person. It should be the president or the vice president under the general ordinance. If you're hiring somebody and you think they're going to make $9,000, you don't think there's any possibility it's going to go over that, but something happens later on and it looks like it's going to go over that, that's a different situation. And we should probably address that at the time.
Okay, because it will happen. In my experience, it will happen. We just don't know for who, because sometimes people that I think would stay and work through September, they can't do it, so somebody else has to do it within that same staff.
Yeah, and I think the easy way to deal with that is if you're hiring them and they're going to make $9,000, and then we get to August and we realize, no, they're going to make another $2,000 or $3,000, or July, whenever we would figure that out, then I think the easy answer is we should talk to the president and the vice president, or the vice president, and get them to authorize the contracting.
Okay, and this is effective.
That's another thing. It reads April 15th, 2022.
We should probably change that. I mean, I suppose you guys could amend it on its face
Rogers,
right
you want
now.
to amend your motion?
Yeah.
Are we under any obligation, Mr. Valenti, to like give 2 weeks, or can things go in effect immediately, or are we under any sort of obligations like that?
No, we can make it go into effect tomorrow if we want to.
Well, I'm fine making it go into effect, and I will make a motion to amend the original motion to make it go into effect on May 16th. Which is next Monday, if that's fine.
So I still have the same question. If somebody's already working here,
they're already there.
This year.
Don't worry about it. They're already there.
Okay, so it's future as of May 16th.
Right. If they already have a contract, they already have a contract.
Okay.
So the contract doesn't need to be re-signed every year. Is that correct?
No, no, but if you have somebody who's making $8,000 this year and they're going to get a bump and be over $10,000, then I think we have to have the president or the vice president make the contract with them.
Okay.
Okay. Can I ask one more question? Sorry, just to be clear, this is just, we have to call the president and the vice president. We don't have to bring these candidates to a board meeting, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
The general ordinance allows the president or the vice president to make the decision to hire someone. Now, they can't do that unless it's already been authorized by the board in the budget.
Right.
But
A matter of housekeeping, Commissioner Rogers made an amended motion, amendment to his previous motion. I would second that. And so then that would be the motion that we're moving forward on. Does anybody have any further discussion?
And all he changed was the date of effectiveness, correct?
So technically I made a second motion, so the amendment has to be addressed before the main motion can be addressed. Because I can't amend my main motion once it's been seconded.
Unless you want to withdraw your motion. So as a matter of housekeeping, Mr. Rogers, how would you like to go forward?
I think we're fine just having the two motions stand. So make have a vote on the amended motion followed immediately by amendment on a vote on the main motion.
Okay, I agree. Anybody have further discussion?
Yeah, I do. The wording says the language added to 2.11, et cetera, is for if the contract is for 12 months or less and a value of 10,000 or less. The language there of "and," does that mean that both of those conditions need to be met, that the contract is for 12 months or less and a value of 10,000 or less, or is it either or?
Yes, the way it's worded, both have to be true. So if he was to hire somebody and give them a 10-year contract at $1,000 a year, he's not authorized to do that.
Okay. And the 10,000 or less would I assume be relating to any given year, not a total, like, you know. So in your example just now, $1,000 per year, we're talking about $10,000 as a yearly contract amount. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And Charlie, if you don't mind, in layman's terms, just a quick summary of exactly what this changes from what it used to be before.
So it used to be Brian, the director of Parks and Recreation, had no authority to enter into contracts on behalf of the Park District, which puts him at risk because legally, if the Park District decides not to pay on any of the contracts he made, he could be required to pay out of his own pocket. So if he, for instance, had hired somebody to come in and fix a lawnmower, and you guys decided he didn't want to pay that, he could legally be compelled to pay that out of his own pocket. So now we are changing the general ordinance to reflect the actual practice of the Park District, is that quite often, most often, contracts are entered into by Brian, by the Director of Parks and Recreation on behalf of the Park District for most routine items. And the only check and balance we're putting on that now is that if its contract goes more than a year, he can't do it. And if the contract involves a sum of more than $10,000, he can't do it. That has to be signed under the general ordinance. The contract has to be made under the general ordinance by the president, or in his absence, the vice president.
Okay. And in practice, does this basically mean that Brian and Natalie can still conduct most of the hiring practices that they have been, but final decisions in terms of actually officially hiring people and contracts being signed, that the board now has to, or I'm sorry, the president or vice president has to play a role in that, whereas they did not before? Is that one of the changes?
They always had to play a role in it, but for whatever reason, we got away from that and weren't doing it that way because it didn't make sense to have certain routine matters go to the president or the vice president all the time. So we're changing the rules to reflect the actual practice, which makes sense in the operation of the Park District.
Okay. And sort of relating to Brian's point about not necessarily knowing in advance what the total will be paid, in the event that we hire somebody who is, for better or worse, for whatever reason, charging us hourly instead of, salaries that are set ahead of time and that kind of thing, we don't know the total necessarily. Sure, we could refer to the budget because that's somewhat of a parameter, right, of like how much that position will be paid. But if we are paying hourly, So is it best for him to err on the, or Brian or anyone in his position to err on the side of, if it could go into that territory of being over 10,000, involve the president or vice president, and if they know for sure that it won't, then they don't have to take that additional step?
That's right. If they know for sure it won't, they don't have to do that. If he has concern about it, then he says, President of the board, why don't you sign this offer letter to them? Because right now we can't tell if they're going to get paid more than $10,000 or not. It's just the safer course of action.
Okay, and one final question, I think, is another element of the practice of hiring that Natalie and Brian have undertaken, in my understanding, is that they are interviewing those people, they are talking it through, they are deciding who they want to go with for camp directors or this or that. They're still handling all of that. It's just that the official decisions to hire whomever we're hiring is the part that the president or vice president gets in on.
That's right.
Okay. Actually, I'm sorry. One final question, because a number of times in my time on the board, I have seen the board talk about and vote on taking a certain action to employ a certain individual. And then the board has said to Brian, okay, we've given the approval. Now you work out the details in terms of actually signing a contract. That's a part that's changing too, correct? Brian would not be signing the contract. The president or vice president would be signing.
So if it meets the criteria, if it's a $5,000 contract and someone's going to get something done in 5 months, he can sign that contract. It binds the park district. He doesn't need to involve the president or the vice president. If he's not sure, or if it exceeds that criteria, then he should have the president sign. Or if it's not a signed contract, it's just calling someone up, he should have the president make that call.
Okay. And Matt Rogers, I have a question for you. In terms of your original goals with raising this issue in the first place, would you just remind us what it is you were trying to achieve specifically?
Specifically to codify something, because there seemed to be some inconsistency in our practices. And so by making a policy that was stated and making our practices reflection in our ordinances, and to make sure that the board, the second part of this, which really hasn't been talked about, is making sure that the board has retained its ability to hire consultants and advisors for things like working with our executive, with our strategy, with our long-term planning, things like that. So that's the second part of this. The first part is codifying and giving the park director, some cover for giving them the authorization to execute contracts at a certain level, but then also retaining our authority as the board for the oversight for anything that is a long-term planning strategy oversight that we would do.
Okay. And do you view this language that Charlie has helped with to effectively protect the park district, protect even the director, because then these decisions are not solely his or hers to make? So do you feel comfortable that this achieves what it is that you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, if we've budgeted money, then the park director and or his or her designee should be able to spend that money, as long as that the park director signs the final document, up to those and within those parameters.
I have one more.
So let me just add that we're changing the policy, and we're trying to do it in a way that will reflect reality. It may be that something we're doing here may need to be tweaked as we get experience with it, but I still think it's the right first step. We may need to tweak it later to make it more workable.
Okay, and I just have a question for staff. I mean, I'm just wanting to generally ask Brian and Natalie.
Hey, Martha, before we get into that, Brian and Natalie had raised their hands.
Oh, okay.
Brian, you can go first.
Quick question. Does this affect partner classes? Because they're technically rentals. And we can't predict their enrollment, but for instance, Imaginary Game will easily go over $10,000 in enrollment, of which we get 25%. They're fully insured, that their rental payment is 25%. They make the other 75%. Does this affect partner classes?
I think it does.
Okay.
But you're also working on a separate contract for that, right, Charles? So
Yes.
so that contract then that you're creating will need to be signed by the president.
Yes.
Okay. What can I ask? What constitutes strategy and planning? Oh, I'm sorry, Brian.
I'm sorry, because the next partner class is going to be in effect. Well, we're taking registration now, but it'll be in effect early August. So we have to get that contract ready and able to sign for Imaginary Game.
We have like 6
Understood.
in August, right?
What's that?
Understood.
We have like 6 partners in August.
And just logistically, I'd also say I'm working from home these days, so we can get on a schedule to review those, get signatures, and get underway, see how it works.
Will there be any kind of like guidance or specification on what strategy and planning means? Because the Ready Committee, for example, we do things like that. My camp directors help with things like that. I work with our graphic designer on the brochure. We talk about things like that. So I'm just wondering if that will be made more specific so I can stay in line with what you want.
So my intent behind that is things that people who are working and coordinating the way that we work with the city, the way that we work with if we were to develop a 5-year plan, things like that. The Ready Committee, for example, working with the coordinator would be somebody, because they're helping fashion policy for the board. Graphic designer isn't coming up with policy for you. It's how you're presented, but it's not a policy type thing. So that's kind of how I picture them being different.
Okay.
If you want to talk,
I think no matter what we do, there's always going to be some gray area. But the important thing about having this in the policy is that we know it's there and you will be sensitive to it. So if you think you have something that's close to the line, you'll either decide to kick it up to the board, or you'll get the board to give you an indication of whether this is something they want to have significant input on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's another one. Our brochure is printed twice a year. Probably 50% of the $15,000 that we spend on brochures is mailing and graphic design. So do we need to have a contract for Sarin and the graphic, the producing of the brochure, because it goes door to door. She bills us for the mailing. It's all in the 15,000 twice a year.
That's an agreement that needs to be made by the president or the vice president.
Okay.
We're going to look at last year's expenditures and come up with a list.
Well, and that's fine. I mean, this is a starting point. If we discover that the 12,000 makes more sense because we have a bunch of things that are always approved at 12,000, then we can look at that. But this at least gets us started, and we will tweak it as necessary. But it gets us closer to having a policy that it reflects practice and protects everybody that's involved and outlines the expectations for everybody that's involved.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I just want to, my final thoughts on it. Can you hear me? Final thoughts from me is that I don't think we're ready to vote on this. It sounds like there's a lot of questions still, a lack of total understanding of what's really going on, and I think that staff and the effect on staff of this change are just it's kind of a big deal, and it's just the right thing to do to let staff have a little bit more time to work through exactly how this will affect them, you know. So it would be my preference to give it another month and come back with everybody a little bit more prepared, a little bit more understanding. Understand it better is what I mean to say.
Okay, so right now there are 2 motions on the table that have been seconded.
So let me just say one thing. Understand that if you don't pass this today, which is fine, Brian should not be entering into any contracts on behalf of the Park District at this point in time. I mean, it's one thing to have been doing it before when we kind of didn't realize we were doing it, but now that we know, he should not be doing it at all.
And I'll just put my 2 cents in. I think Charles has done a good job. It's a strong framework to start with. We're a small organization. I think we can get started on this. I like the framework of it. I think it protects the Park District and the executive director.
I'll call the question.
So as we discussed, first we're going to start with the amendments to the original motion, and that amendment changes the language of the proposed ordinance change, specifically section 3, which as of right now reads, this will be enacted and in full force on April 15th, 2022. And the motion is to change that until Monday, May 16th, 2022. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Braun,
Yes.
Gaines,
No.
Morel,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. And so now we're going to go to the first motion of Mr. Rogers. Do you want to summarize that, or do you want me to, Matt? We don't have a second.
Yeah, it's basically just to adopt it as it has been presented with the change that obviously was just made through the previous motion. And then part of the original motion also involved changing the name of the president to reflect the new president.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Braun,
Yes.
Gaines,
No.
Morel,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes. All right, the motion passes. Moving on to new business.
May I ask one more quick question? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So I could go ahead and get Reba Park done for $9,800 without going to the board president.
I'm assuming there's already a contract signed on that, is there not?
Well, it's not signed because they haven't started, but there's been a delay, but it's $9,800. It's not 10,000.
Yeah, as long as it's under the $10,000, you can sign it. If it's going to cost more than that, then it would need either the president or vice president's signature.
Correct. Okay, got it.
Brian, we're going to stay with you for new business, presenting the tentative budget.
Okay. Hold on one second. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so we're going to give you a highlight of the tentative budget that you received in your packet. But first thing I'd like to say is something you're going to need to consider. CPI this year is going to be 7+%. Our tax increase, Charles, you can correct me if I'm wrong. We can increase our budget 5% or CPI, whichever's lower. Well, CPI is going to be higher than 5%. Most taxing authorities are going to increase their budget 5%, but that's something for you to consider down the road. Jerry and I have had this discussion. It'll help us bring wages into line so people aren't deciding not to work here because we're paying them $14 an hour instead of $15 or $16 an hour, which is the minimum going rate almost everywhere. So at any rate, I'll start with the budget. CA 51, just some highlights. You can look at some of the normals and bring them up whenever, or tonight, or next month. But CA 21 is an item where board development activities. You should really look at that and decide what you want to do with equity outreach and how much money we need to spend there. I left it at 12,500. The total category is 24,000. Capital improvements in CA 51 should really look at that. We have to get two AEDs to replace two that are going to expire. And then there's asbestos removal. I don't have a number on that. I wrote 10,000 down, but I should have a number for that by June. So that's an area to keep an eye on. As we go into the recreation side of the budget, fuel. Flip a coin on that one. Gasoline for our vehicles. I wrote it in 12,000. I think a full year, we'll have to take a look at that one, but that's something we have to keep an eye on. Then there's R14, some seminars for the maintenance crew. Marcos has done a great job of trying to improve himself as a maintenance foreman, and he's in classes and he'll continue to be in classes. I would like to be able to say that I'm pretty sure the board's going to pass that and we can reimburse you for some of that stuff. It'll be fully, right now he's taking some carpentry and electrical classes, and so he can make a minor change in the building without us having to call an electrician. Then R17, ice rink liner and parts. That's just something. Park benches, slabs, and then some, we'll have to purchase. It's not in the budget, but I'll get it in the budget. It's a brush for the Kubota vehicle whenever we get it, which is going to be in next year, but it's budgeted this year. Jerry will help us explain that in June. And then in R23, partner camps is there. We're going to spend probably $100,000 in partner camps, which it puts a lot of kids active. COVID's over, but we'll make 25,000 on that 100. So it's a good program revenue for Ridgeville Park District. Also, most wages, and I briefly touched on it, part-time staff, adults, I'm going to have to get them up to 15 an hour, or we're going to have trouble hiring people. And this will be guys like people who work the ice rink in the winter. We have a great guy. He's currently making 14. I don't want to lose him. Seasonal summer staff for maintenance. We're looking for somebody. It'll be a college kid most likely, because most adults aren't going to look at it unless they're in a unique situation, like maybe a retiree or something like that. And then counselors, high school counselors are not going to make 15 an hour, but adults will. And camp directors are going to make 19 to 20. So you'll see, if you do the math, it's getting close to 10,000 on probably 7, 8, 9, 10 employees. And then let me see what else I got here. Then when we start talking about the brochures, take a good look at that category, which is, I'm sorry, RA 55. And then last but not least, there's going to be some categories we move over based on what Jerry and I look at this month and what we talk to you about next month, meaning how we're going to deal with Cook County and the delay on tax revenues. So we may move over a bunch of things from this year to next year to keep us in a cash flow positive situation. And then Vandenhaven bequest, I have 15,000, something you guys should look at that and think about more or less. That's it in a nutshell for the highlights. Um, I mentioned discussing moving things because of Cook County. That'll be an interesting scenario for us. So we'll have more update on that in June. And July, you have to pass a form of the tentative budget. It is by no means the final product. In September, you'll pass the appropriation ordinance, which is probably the final product. And in December, you'll pass the levy ordinance, which is the final product based on the appropriation ordinance. So that's it in a nutshell.
Does anybody have anything for discussion?
I have a quick question about CA1 under the corporate treasurer. I know Mr. Gibbs had submitted something that didn't make it onto the agenda about his salary.
Right.
And I feel it is appropriate, since we're discussing the budgeting for next year, to ask him if there's anything he would like to put or make comment on. I've noticed, I don't know, there's a number there that seems to be different than the numbers he was talking about. So I don't know if that's been reflected. But I'd just like to give him an opportunity to speak about that particular item if he wants, or if he wants to wait till next meeting, that's fine as well.
The only thing I'd say here is it's two different issues. The note I sent out wanting to have an item on this month's agenda was talking about the budget for the fiscal year we're currently in. The document in front of us is for the fiscal year coming up. But both have issues relative to the salary for the treasurer. The coming budget year reflects a significant bump up in the salary, primarily due to just the recognition of the fact that over time, that position has not kept up with the market, and kind of as a minimum baseline, I think it's reasonable to suggest that the treasurer should at least be compensated at the level that the auditor is doing, because we're both doing basically the same kind of work. We just travel different roads to get to the conclusion and cross-check each other. And so that's the logic for the new budget year coming up. Obviously, this isn't passed yet. It's got months of discussion ahead yet. So that's not a fixed in stone kind of figure. The item that didn't get on the agenda, I'll just defer that until next month because it's not up for discussion right now. So, but just understand they're really two separate issues. That's all.
My understanding though is that we can discuss it as long as we don't vote on the matter.
Sure, sure. I think it's a pretty quick discussion in that there was a figure contemplated the last couple of budget years that hasn't been acted on by the board. So what we show in the budget is not what we're actually paying. We're paying less than what we're showing. And that's been true for a couple of years. And all I'm asking is that you act to implement the budget for this fiscal year. We can't go back and fix prior fiscal years. That's not the issue. It's just while we're still in this current year, we have an opportunity to fix it. So if we can get that fixed, please do. That's my ask.
Okay, Mr. Gibbs, I'll just ask that you reach out to me individually, and then we will have a motion put together to address that at the next meeting.
Very good.
I also have another question. When we put equity in our board development, that doesn't seem like it's really the appropriate place for it. It seems to me that it really should almost live on its own somewhere, because it's not really, we're hiring an equity coordinator who will be working with the Ready Committee and working with us somewhat, but the majority of that time will be spent with the Ready Committee. And so I'm wondering if there's some way that can be pulled out and listed as its own item, since it's not truly what one would think of as board development.
Yeah, Jerry.
I would just comment a little bit about the history of how it ended up there, why it ended up there, and what the sensitivities are from a treasurer's perspective. Initially, it was probably more a board development activity. The community came to the board concerned about an issue. The board didn't feel competent to address it and needed the hiring of an outside consultant to raise education and awareness at the board level. Over time, as it started to drift down to drive through the entire organization, there might be some validity to the point of where does it reside. The challenge, I think, is this. In my mind as treasurer, I find it hard to defend that this is a recreation-based activity, which is what we have authority for taxing the taxpayers of the district for. We don't have taxing authority for this type of a program. So to move it out as a line item of its own into somewhere else, and where would that somewhere else be? Corporate fund would be for general corporate purposes. Recreation would be for recreation programs. Regardless of where it ends up, the issue is the funding source. I think at some point, the more this becomes less board development and more some non-recreational activity of the district, I think the district needs to find a funding source other than taxpayer dollars to avoid creating a potential problem for a successful lawsuit from a taxpayer advocacy group.
Martha?
It's my understanding from the equity work that we've been engaged in so far since that began, all of which I have been a part of, not just as a board member, but as a READY committee member. It's my understanding that that work was absolutely supposed to be for board development, for the entire entity's development, the institution. Part of the reason the committee was formed, as opposed to not needing to be formed and having the equity work be done solely with the board and staff, is because it is complex, time-consuming, specialized work, and it's absolutely something that the community should be able to join us in, instead of it being internal work for the board and organization that is 100% internal in a way that the community doesn't know about, doesn't participate in, et cetera. Not to mention that it benefits the board to have a committee do some of that research, legwork, discussing, interviewing candidates, et cetera, and bringing it back to the board so that the board doesn't have to do all of that themselves. The committee existing and doing that work does not mean that this is not board development. It absolutely is. It was designed that way. That's what it's supposed to be. So I view it to be in the exact place where it should be and where it should remain. And I worry, in fact, that certain board members that might not want to be participating in equity work might want that put in a different place, so that it eventually is an expenditure, as Jerry says, that might not even have a place within our budget at all. And that makes me very worried and very sad. So I wanted to make sure I said that.
I'll just counter and say that I disagree with most of those points. That I think that by pulling it out does emphasize it, but I don't believe that most of the work that is being done by our equity coordinator is a direct, what one would say, as board development. Having me attend a workshop at a Y, that's board development. Having an outside source come in and talk to us about an issue is board development. But I just want to raise that issue. I will probably discuss it again at a different meeting when we talk about budget, just to see where the best place is for that to be, because I don't believe it is board development specifically in the outline of what one would think of as board development. And it's not someplace that people can readily find it in our budget item. It's not someplace people would look for it necessarily.
And Commissioner Rogers, were you actually on this board for any of the period where we had actively consulted with an equity consultant, or have you only been on the board during the time that we've been trying to secure an equity consultant within this budget year?
I'll say this, it really doesn't matter. I'm on the board now, and this is my concern. And so I'm raising my concern, and I'm asking the treasurer about it, and I will ask it again, probably, to make sure that it is in the right place and that it is doing what we're asking it to do.
Okay, we're not going to decide anything tonight. Commissioner Rogers, I hear you have a valid concern. Mr. Gibbs, I think, had a very good conservative answer of protecting the park district. I follow your reasoning, Mr. Rogers, that it could be clearer in our budget, and I'm happy to continue that conversation. All right, anything else? All right, moving on. Jerry?
Just as a general comment about the budget process and where we're at this point, this is the freshly poured. You hear me use this analogy every year. This is the freshly poured concrete. I very much welcome active engagement by all the commissioners in developing the budget. It's Brian's budget. He's the guy that has to implement it each year. So he lives and dies by this document. As we move forward, the concrete is going to set. By the time we get to the August meeting, it's very difficult to make substantive changes to the budget, and it's going to be in final form for the September board meeting. So I very much encourage all input and all active engagement on any thoughts for the budget from now, especially now and going forward. But that's where we're headed. So
thank you, Jerry.
If I give an answer, I don't mean to close down conversation at all. I love the participation at this phase of it. And Brian and I had the same discussion when he and I met to review a form of this in advance of the meeting as well. That, in fact, that's why you don't have an Exhibit A with it today. As I said, I don't want you to worry about what are our constraints and boundaries at this point. Put it all on the table. Then we'll work the process to see what can we fit everything in the box or not, or is there something we have to scrap?
Okay, thank you. I think we're not making a decision tonight, but I, for one, am open to creative solutions. Commissioner Gaines.
I just wanted to follow up on the issue of the treasurer payment. It's my understanding that things like the auditors, they set their price. They tell us what their services are going to cost. When we post a position, we set the salary. When we hire consultants, they're usually setting at least some, if not all, of the terms of their payment details, including amount and the pay structure, all of that. When it comes to the treasurer, and anyone can answer this, but certainly, Jerry, I'm asking you historically, do you set your rate or do we set the rate?
I'm gonna interrupt here, Martha. This is gonna be on the budget it's going to be on the agenda for next board meeting. We can't make any decisions tonight, and we have a lot of work to get through.
Well, I wasn't proposing a decision be made. I was asking a question. So if you wouldn't mind letting Jerry answer that.
Quickly, we got to move on.
Well, obviously, I serve at the pleasure of the board, and the board, sets a salary hoping to, attract candidates that are capable of doing the position. So certainly I have thoughts and input to it, but it's not my decision. It's the board's decision.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, Commissioner Braun, you're up next on the agenda to discuss adding community garden plots for rent.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the reason I asked for that to be on the agenda was because it was at a meeting where a woman, citizen, Gabriella, I think, spoke. And then the next meeting, we had no answers, no discussion, no anything for her. And so I asked that be put on, but I had assumed that the staff was going to bring some information about that they would,
Okay, so I think we will go to Natalie. I know she's done work on this since our last meeting.
Brian is prepared to talk about this.
Okay.
I've toured the parks. You have 3 or 4 major issues. 1, what green space are you ready to give up? 2, can we get water to that green space? Meaning, is there water in the park? Can we run underground connection to the area? That's going to be very expensive, probably in the $20,000 range. And then there are certain parks where there's just absolutely no room. So what I would suggest is some commissioner who wants to tour the parks with me. I have some ideas, but to share them now, I have to do more research. I'm very interested in micro plots that Sandra Madison brought up, and and how big are they and things of that nature. So what green space are you willing to give up? How are we going to get water there? Is it shade ridden, or are there trees there? Do you want to take trees down and then have the tree community have some problems? We only have 14 acres. There's a lot of playgrounds or play circuits. There's baseball diamonds, soccer field. So it's not an easy question to answer, but if somebody wants to walk with me, we can discuss it. I've already talked to Mick Morrell about it at length, and there's some interesting ideas, but I could walk the parks with a commissioner so he can see, or she can see exactly what we're talking about, and then bring forward some kind of recommendation and or report in June.
I want to make it clear that my main reason for putting that on the agenda was that I felt that we should be responding to citizens. And I agree. And I felt like we missed the boat on that one. So thank you, Brian.
Yeah, so Debbie, I stopped by 908 Sewer the other day and had a lengthy conversation with Brian regarding the garden plots, because I wanted to do right by the citizens who had showed interest in this. And it's also, I'm lucky enough to have a backyard with great garden space. And I know that if I didn't, I would definitely want that. So I hear the interest, and Gabriella, I see you're listening in, and know that we're, Brian, I'd be happy to answer your question. Brian, I'd be happy to continue this with you as long as the other commissioners are okay with that. I'll reach out to Brian, we'll find a time, and we'll go check out the parks. However, realize that, there are, while it is important to me, and I know the other commissioners are on board with trying to find, I think they are on board with trying to find other space for garden. Obviously, there are constraints to that, right? Getting water to a specific spot is extremely expensive, would take a lot of time. We have green space that we need to preserve. You also, before committing to doing water, it's got to be it's got to have the right spot. And you're also committing you're committing a part of a park that's now only for one person instead of anybody from the community being able to enjoy it. So after quickly speaking with Brian, I think we definitely have the opportunity at 908 to anywhere from 6 to 10 more spots quickly, which is something that we could look into doing quickly, but meaning by next year. There's water already there. There's an opportunity to squeeze more in. So that's something that we could look into. However, I think the micro plots, I think more research on my part. I can, I'd be happy to do more research. I can reach out to the citizen who spoke earlier, who seems to have a lot of knowledge on this, and we can try to find a good place for this, and hopefully we can do right by the citizens. And before I turn this over and stop, I just want to say that I would be okay with spending the money on the plumbing to get more plots. But before doing it, we just need to make sure that that money that we're committing is going to go to a place that would work really well for it, and we wouldn't be taking away from the park. We would just be adding to it. So that's my take on it.
A little premature. I think this is great. We're having this discussion, but stuff about committing to water, I mean, there needs to be a lot of discussion and brought back to the citizens.
Sure. So I don't think we're there yet. I don't think Nick was saying that.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that that's a big part of this, right? That is probably the biggest part about these, because we can't just go throw dirt on the ground or make garden boxes or say this is for garden. It needs water. That is the biggest hurdle to jump in making these garden plots. So that's why I'm talking about it.
So Brian, I know you offered to walk the park with a commissioner or so. It sounds like Mick is interested in that. Would you be willing to open that up to the community members as well?
Sure.
Maybe specifically folks who've come to the meeting, sent emails, addressed concerns.
Yeah, because
I think that would be great.
Any gardener might have great ideas. So, we'll just see what limitations we have and or what new information we can gather. Sure.
For sure. Ms. Martin, I would say we don't normally take comments from the public at this point, but I really appreciate your sticking with us, being a part of this conversation. So if you want to share, feel free.
I just wanted to, I guess my question was, how would you let people know, or the people that have been interested so far, how to participate? If they're interested, that was my question.
Sure. So I think easily we have folks who've made a public comment. That's all in our minutes. Anybody who's sent an email. We're a pretty small community. I think we could identify anybody who's proactively reached out to us. And then also I would, I think it'd be pretty easy to reach out to the current Elks Garden community. They're definitely invested partners.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else on this topic?
Well, I guess I would like to ask for a report at the next meeting to be included in Natalie's report or Brian's report at the next meeting.
It'll be in mine.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on. Commissioner Gaines, discuss equity consultant proposals.
It's my understanding this is just lingering on the agenda from previously, and we discussed this during the Ready Committee update. So I don't have anything new. Natalie, do you have a different understanding at all for this agenda point? Because you and I have talked.
No, I think we're good. I think the questions were answered during JC's report.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Right, thank you. Moving on, Commissioner Rogers for action to discuss moving board meetings to 7 p.m.
As I sit here looking at my clock that it's 9:34 and we still have a few other items to get through, I would like to discuss with the rest of the board beginning our meetings a half hour earlier and therefore ending a half hour earlier. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I just brought it up. I mean, I don't really have anything formal proposed or anything. It's just more of a discussion object, but it's a for action. So if we were to decide to do it, we could move forward with that.
Would you like to make a motion?
I would move that beginning with our June meeting and going forward, all regular monthly meetings of the Board of Commissioners for Ridgeville Park District begin at 7 p.m.
Is there a second? Debbie Braun seconds.
Thank you.
All right. Any discussion? I don't have a problem with it. Does anybody have a conflict with that? Nick, I know you
That one goes to
are sometimes scheduled to work during our meetings. Would that make it easier or harder for you in any way?
No, there's no, between 7 and 7:30, there's no difference for me when I'm at work. So I'm on board with it. But I think obviously they don't technically have a vote, but I think because they are at our meetings, I don't know if we can in this right now, but if we could hear from Brian and Natalie and Jerry and Charles and everybody else that has to be at the meetings, I'd like to know if they're okay with it as well.
Great point.
I am all for it.
It's fine right now, as long as we're meeting online for the rest of the spring session. I do have classes in there on Thursday nights that wrap up at 7, so I would just need time to set up tables and whatnot. But it seems like we will be continuing to meet online for the next month, so then it won't be an issue. And I will make sure not to schedule things in the fall. I'll make sure there's enough time between classes and the beginning of the meetings.
I saw.
Thank
Mr.
you
Gibbs.
for asking.
Mr. Gibbs gave a thumbs up. Mr. Valenti.
Thank you for asking. I'm fine with it as long as we're Zoom. And if we go off Zoom, we can figure it out then.
Okay. JC, I don't know if you're with us. No comment. JC?
She's good.
A thumbs up for 7 o'clock. Can we have a roll call vote?
Braun,
Yes.
Gaines,
I'll abstain because it doesn't affect me. I won't be on the board moving forward.
Morel,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. Moving on, back to Commissioner Gaines to discuss an update on nature-based play areas.
Thank you. So this is actually linked with the agenda item after it as well, which is for action, motion to form nature-based play area planning committee. So I would, I'd like to go with F first, if that's all right, Mitchell, as part of fleshing out.
I'm fine to combine E and F if everybody else is. Anybody? But for clarity, that we can only take action on the motion to form a planning committee for a nature-based play.
Correct, and that's the only area that I'm proposing action for tonight. So
Right,
I'm
so
making,
just in efficiency's sake, we're going to combine topics E and F, discuss update on nature-based play areas. Also F for action, motion to form nature-based play area planning committee.
okay, and so I will speak on both, but I won't make the motion just yet because I'm going to explain it first. The update to the nature-based play areas, which I'm not quite clear in my memory actually how many of you have been on board for the entirety of this discussion versus joining us somewhat recently on it. But I was speaking on the benefits of having a nature-based play area in one of our parks as far back as when we were making decisions about the replacement play circuit for Reba Park. And because there had already been work done by Brian and others to plan for options for Reba Park's play equipment replacement, we ultimately decided to go with, one of those proposed options. But we subsequently decided to take out the picnic table, which was very old at the southwest corner of Reba Park, and sort of clear space to be putting some nature-based play area elements over there. And those things have already been purchased. They've already been delivered. They're ready to put there. As I asked Brian during his monthly update earlier, they're ready to go. So hopefully those are going to be put at Reba anytime soon. It's a mud kitchen is what it's currently commonly referred to as. It's a little wooden play kitchen, which is designed for kids to play with sticks and mud and stones and pretend kitchen and in the park and interact with nature as they're doing so. And then we ordered other things. So that's old news. That's already been budgeted, money spent, decisions made. It just needs to be put in the park. But during that time is when I started talking about looking into a larger scale nature-based play area installation in one of our parks. And not a lot has been done yet, partly because of COVID, partly because of, more recently, tax dollars not reaching us yet. So this is probably one of the things that we're going to spend a little bit later than we, had planned to, a little bit later than we normally would. But I've spoken to Brian recently about a spot that I have in mind. It differs from the original talk of Elks being a good location because there are a number of issues with Elks. I don't want to waste time saying why I'm not interested in Elks. I just want to say why I am interested in Leiter. So Leiter, to the furthest west of that plot of land, has the very new park equipment. Prior to what's about to go into Reba, it's our newest park equipment. It also has a section a little bit further east of where that new equipment is that is quite old equipment, and I don't think we have anything planned in an immediate sense for replacing that. But where that older equipment is, fire truck, etc., to the west a little bit and south of that particular area, but still part of the Leiter land, is just a kind of underused area. It's got a lot of aging bushes, some trees that might not be in great shape. that to me is the best fit for identifying as a location for a nature-based play area installation, in the form of taking out all of the post-mature bushes that are not in good shape and not doing anybody any favors, and redesigning that land ever so slightly to just be used for nature-based play. I'm hopefully going to be in the position of supplying the board with all kinds of visuals and explanations, links, videos, all kinds of stuff to better familiarize yourself with the benefits of nature-based play if you're not already familiar. But this is something that's really important to me. It's really important to the community. And we have, as I'm sure all of you know, already budgeted $15,000 in this current year's budget to do some nature-based play area stuff beyond what I've already said we're doing at Riva. So Brian, did you have a chance to walk over to that area we talked about since we talked, or not yet?
I did. I walked it, and you're absolutely correct. There are some bushes that could be and should be probably removed, whether nature-based play area goes there or not. It's a very shady area. It would be, I think, a nice, good-looking addition to the park. A few things, obviously, the board would need to check it out. I was thinking about mapping an area out with paint on the grass, just so you could see the area we're talking about. And then to make it a nature-based play area, we would remove the sod, add wood chips, put in new equipment, and it's not kind of equipment you have to put in the ground. It's none of that kind of stuff. And it invites the use of children to use their imagination and how they play and what they do. It would actually look good. It would actually be, I think, the only one in Evanston. I don't think the city has one anywhere. I don't think the Skokie has one. Chicago has a few that I know of.
Skokie kind of has one.
At any rate, it's just something to look at, and it would be a nice addition.
Thanks, Brian. So like I said, that's a good location.
Martha?
Yeah, Mick. Sorry.
I just wanted to echo that. I grew up in that park. I take my daughter there once a week. I'm very familiar with that location, and I hadn't thought of it before, but knowing that location well, I think that would work really well. And I think having it be a naturally shaded area, when I picture a nature-based play area, I kind of picture a shaded area such as that, where you got the trees and it's kind of secluded in itself over there. So that's I think that's a great spot for it.
Thanks, Mick. Yeah, some of the experts that I've talked to have said that underused green space with shade that is in an easily accessible place, that's kind of a great recipe for a location. And so to me, it just checks all the boxes. And then for us, more specifically as a park district and who we are and what we do and who our community is, it's important to me that a nature-based play area would not be taking away from any of the current usages of our space, everything from soccer to, parents bringing their kids to the park, other sport uses. It's important to me that there's no conflict of interest, if at all possible, with a redesign of space. And, we would obviously down the line have more community engagement, give people a chance to say that they support it or that they don't and why. And so you never know what you're going to hear, right? You might have people who say that they have a problem with it, but from everything that I can see, and after talking to people for many, many months, walking the parks, thinking it through, I think it's definitely the best fit. And in a lot of ways is not just better than other places, but is a really good option. So I don't want to take a ton more time because we are already late with this, but I just wanted to sort of touch on some other bullet points of what I'm envisioning. And of course, as you all know, I'm not going to be a decision-making part of this process beyond tonight, but I'm very passionate about volunteering my time and my research and my connections to continue to do whatever I can to help make this happen. While I am still in the position of being able to speak in this capacity, I think it would be a really good fit to be considering using a fair amount of the bequest funds for new plantings in the area, so that the nature-based play area is not just cut down trees, cut up into logs and tree cookies. It's also beautification, which is what the bequest was supposed to be for, park beautification specifically in the context of landscaping. I'd love that to be even further native plantings. So that's good for the ecology. It's good for the environment. It's good for pollinators. It's good for us to have native plants there. So I just think that goes in hand, a nature-based play area and new plantings, native plants. I also want to throw it out there that the timing of the discussion of the possibility of additional garden plots might be a good fit for this area too. That particular section of Leiter is not enormous, but it's sizable. And the more post-mature bushes that are removed, the more of a canvas, so to speak, we have to work with. And Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a water fountain at Leiter. I don't know if it's currently functional.
It is not, and it has lead problems. So until we can figure out where the lead is getting into the system, we can't use that fountain. And you wouldn't want to water your vegetables with leaded water.
Right. And I mean, some of the nature-based play, sorry, Brian, go ahead.
It's not significant amounts of lead, but it's over the threshold. So it's either the copper pipes are soldered with old solder that had lead in it, or all the parts underground near the fountain buried in concrete have lead in them. And then therefore the water out of the fountain is infected with lead.
Okay. I don't know what
you'd have to, assuming there was no lead, you'd have to run that underground several 150 feet maybe to the garden area if there is one, and then there'd have to be certain things the city was going to require us to do. So it'll be expensive.
Okay. Mick, to your point about laying additional piping for the purpose of having additional garden beds, I'm just thinking that a lot of times nature-based play areas, if at all possible, do have water features. So if it's safe and within budget to have water added to nature-based play areas, or if they are installed in areas that already have water accessible, that is just even better. It's even better for the kids to be able to make their own mud and add water to things and stuff like that. So again, it's just throwing it out there, and then I'm not going to be part of this moving forward. But if it was sort of a twofer, that we could put some additional rentable garden plots over in this particular section of Leiter, and if the water could be multifunctional such that it was for the garden beds and accessible for water play, it's always a third benefit to having functional water that people can use a drinking fountain in a park. So a lot easier said than done. I have no idea what it would cost. I have no idea if the location of the lead happened to be city property as opposed to within our property. Is that something they would help us with? I don't know the answers to that, but I think it's worth looking into. So that's kind of it for me in terms of an update on a nature-based play area and how we would use the $15,000 that we've already budgeted for this purpose. The next step is that I, just like we're doing with the Ready Committee, I would love to see the community be able to get involved in the research, discussion, ultimately planning and making recommendations to the board of specific things to do, especially because it's for the community. So I think that the people who highly value this should have a say in what gets done. So I think it would be a great idea to form a committee for the purpose of discussing, researching, and ultimately planning the nature-based play area. So I hereby make that motion that we form a committee for that purpose. And Charlie, can you help me out with something real quick? I was talking to Brian about the possibility of being on that committee myself. And I believe he spoke to you, and I believe you said that even once I'm living outside of the district, I should be able to be on a committee. Is that, do I have that right so far?
Yeah, so you're asking about your eligibility to be on the committee. The committee only renders recommendations to the board, doesn't decide any policy. There's nothing wrong with a non-district member being on that committee. It's obviously up to the board what the board wants to do. You know, they could give preferences to in-district residents or not, but it's up to them.
Okay, and Charlie, just one final question. Given that I would be making a motion to form the committee, I suppose my membership on the committee is just a separate issue that should be dealt with after the committee is formed? Or could it be a combined motion that I'm asking? Yeah, but Matt, are you thinking that it's?
No, we need to create a committee and then we'll, staff up that committee with volunteers.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it'd be more appropriate to do it that way.
Okay. So that's the motion that I'm making, is that I'm asking the board to approve the formation of a nature-based play area planning committee.
There a second?
Morel second.
Any further discussion?
I'll just use the official discussion period to say that this is sort of a method, an official method for me to volunteer to help with this process. Again, in no decision-making capacity, solely as any other community member would be on a committee, just to help in that process and bring recommendations to the board. So that's my vision for myself, if the board were to be okay with that.
Anything further? All right, Natalie, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Braun,
Yes.
Gaines,
Yes.
Morel,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes. Motion passes. Next up, we have the call of the commissioners. Natalie, would you mind roll calling the commissioners?
Sure. Braun,
Nothing.
Gaines,
I just want to say a quick thank you to everybody for just doing what you're doing on this board all the time that we've been working together. All of the staff, Natalie, Brian, Charlie, Jerry, JC, everybody. Thank you so much for everything that we've helped accomplish together. Thank you for working with me. I just feel very lucky to have been a part of this. I'm sad to go. I do hope to be participating in various ways despite moving out of the district. I'm still in Evanston, not that far away. And a special thank you to Matt Mitchell and to Mick Morel for being willing to take on these additional duties as officers, president and vice president. This is all volunteer, you know what I mean? And thank you guys for stepping up.
Thank you, Martha. We'll be in touch.
thank you, Martha. Morel,
No, not really. Thanks to Martha for all her work and dedication to Ridgeville and our community.
Rogers,
Nothing.
Mitchell.
Thank you to Martha for your service. You put in a lot of hours and a lot of work, and the Park District's better for it. Thank you. Moving forward, I'd ask everybody here to use my Ridgeville email, not my work email. That is mmitchell@ridgeville.org. And if you get my other one, I'll try to send you a reminder and just be consistent myself. And that's it. Thank you. All right. So we are now going to citizen comments. Are there any citizen comments at the end of the meeting? Hearing none, we are going to move to executive session. We're going to adjourn to do Mr. Rosinski's annual review. After the commissioners meet and discuss, we'll come back for a final motion, if there's anything to take on that, and adjournment. Any questions? Brian, are you coming to a part of this executive session or no?
I usually do. It's up to you.
I would invite you, yes, for a portion, and I think we'll have a portion without you as well.
then you can kick me out.
Okay.
I'll be here.
So is there a motion to adjourn to executive session?
I move that we recess into executive session for the purpose of discussing the annual review of the Parks Director.
Is there a second?
This is Gaines, I second.
Roll call vote, please.
Braun?
Yes.
Braun?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Morel? Morel?
Hello?
I can hear you.
Sorry, it froze.
It's okay. Is that a yes?
Leaving. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Mitchell?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Rogers?
Yes.
Mitchell?
Yes.
Thanks.
All right. So we're going to adjourn to executive session. We're going to come back here after we've had that session. All right. Debbie is with us. We're back on the record in open session. Any motions?
This is Gaines. I'd like to make a motion to approve a 5% raise for Brian Rosinski retroactive to his start date or his annual review date, whatever I'm supposed to say there.
Not to his start date. That would go back 31 and a half years.
Well, his start date yearly, in other words.
Is there a second?
Rogers will second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. Natalie, can you roll call?
Braun?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Morel?
Yes.
Rogers?
Yes.
Mitchell?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Rogers moves for adjournment.
Gaines seconds.
Roll call, Natalie.
You just need a voice vote on this.
Everybody in favor?
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Good night.
motion carries. Thank you, guys. See you soon.
Good night.
Thanks, Natalie.